Hello and welcome to Cargo Shorts, brought to you by Old Dominion Freight Line. I'm your host, Jonathan Betz, and today we're going to discuss how to create resilience in your logistics operations. How can your logistics partners improve your supply chain and reduce cost? In today's operating environment, the rising cost of transportation, bottlenecks, and service delays have left logistics managers with much to manage. Joining me to talk about all of this are two industry experts, Ed Garner, Director of National Accounts at Old Dominion Freight Line, and Lisa Anderson, President of LMA Consulting Group, which provides expertise and advice on end-to-end supply chain strategy and business transformation. Thank you both for being here today. So Ed, let me start with you. I want to ask about this recent survey from Inbound Logistics. It was a survey of shippers that noted the top three challenges in 2022 have been reducing transportation cost at number one, finding capacity at number two, and customer service at number three. So set the stage for us on this issue. What are some of the challenges that shippers are facing today?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of our thoughts today. You know, the shipper challenges that you mentioned have actually carried over to a large degree from 2021. From a capacity standpoint, we're hearing from many of our customers that not only are they dealing with equipment-related issues from some of their providers, they're also having to work through driver and other labor shortages in many areas of the country, including some labor challenges of some of the big box retailers at their distribution centers, which is causing freight to be held on trailers for days or even weeks past the scheduled delivery date. This challenge and many others will likely continue as we see a downturn in the economy on the way. On the other hand, our network is fully optimized, fully functional, and that's thanks to the foresight of our executive management team with regard to CapEx investments and staffing decisions that were made last year. Secondly, regarding customer service is becoming somewhat of a rare commodity today, as many folks know. Unfortunately, many companies have experienced a difficult time recruiting, training, and retaining good people in customer service, people that are up to the task. Here at Old Dominion, excellent customer service has always been a top priority, and we consider it to be an integral part of our overall value proposition. And lastly, and the big ticket item here is reducing transportation costs has and will likely always be at the top of the list of one of the primary shipper goals. Given this, when it comes to making decisions on which carriers to establish partnerships with, it's critical for shippers to consider their total cost of transportation and understand that price is simply only one component of that total cost.
Yeah, I got to imagine cost is probably one of the biggest challenges that a lot of companies are facing right now. So Lisa, let me ask you about that, because when it comes to logistics, transportation, shipping, clearly by far the most expensive elements here. I know it costs U.S. businesses somewhere in the neighborhood of around $1 trillion annually. So what are you hearing from shippers you talk to about how they're trying to manage their transportation costs, especially in this environment?
It certainly is the challenge. And so they are looking at many opportunities to figure out how to reduce cost in terms of where they're producing product. Should they change their supply chain network? Those are more longer term type of strategies. But they're also looking at, what should I do? Can I collaborate with customers, or can I collaborate with suppliers, find ways to combine freight in one way or another, whether it's partnering in terms of locations, partnering in terms of loads. There's lots of different opportunities that way. And then also partnering with, transportation providers to find innovative solutions for how they might be able to better manage costs. And they're also doing things like setting up programs where they may, or lanes, if you will, where you have a more consistent strategy for your transportation so that you can be more of a shipper with more attractive freight so that you can, achieve more of a win-win when it comes to managing costs.
So Ed, how do you guys handle this topic when it comes to Old Dominion? What do you guys do to calculate the total cost of transportation?
Well, certainly the total cost of transportation includes price, but when you add some of the other, and I call them soft costs that are should be included in that calculation, You have to look at the cost of lost or damaged shipments, the administrative costs associated with filing a claim. All these costs can be significant given reduced inventory levels and logistics staffing. Late shipments obviously will lead to lost sales, dissatisfied customers, fines. The potential loss of a customer due to repeated carrier failures is a huge cost that must be factored into the total cost equation. The bottom line is we believe that shippers want to see consistency and reliability from their carriers, and many are now starting to realize that the total cost of transportation centers on the inclusion of all these factors. Carriers are actually, when you think about it, the carrier is actually the single most important link in the supply chain, because essentially what the carrier becomes is a direct extension of the customer's business. They're the last touch point with that client. So it's critical that they pick a carrier that provides them with the absolute best value in transportation services.
So that's an interesting point right there. Lisa, let me get your thoughts on that. I mean, when it comes to shipper reliability here, is that something that does impact a customer's overall shipping cost? Is that something they calculate when they're choosing a shipper?
Well, they may not calculate it, but they certainly it is certainly a factor because having a superior customer service is really quite critical. I think coming up, we're navigating through turbulent times, rising costs, as we've just been talking about. How do we not only best manage costs, look at the total cost, but how do we make sure that we are providing that superior customer service to our key customers? And they are even looking at prioritizing customers. And, they'll certainly make sure that they utilize carriers that have a good track record of providing that for their key customers.
I mean, part of that reliability, I imagine, relies on delivering the product when you say you're going to deliver it. So, Ed, when it comes to, delivery appointments, we've certainly seen a rise in freight that requires delivery appointments. So, how do these shipping windows create a need for a higher level of reliability from carriers?
Industry estimates are that fully 2/3 of every shipment handled or moved in an LTL environment requires an appointment. And we're certainly experiencing this at Old Dominion and actually project that it's likely going to increase as customers are dealing with limited receiving capabilities caused by the challenges of this workforce. So meeting these delivery appointments can only be accomplished through a precise and coordinated operational execution plan. And as I mentioned earlier, the consequences of a missed delivery appointment can create a significant additional cost for the shipper, many of whom are heavily integrated with e-commerce. And if the product's not in their warehouse on time and intact, then they will not be able to fulfill the demands of their customer base. And additionally, repeated failures to meet appointments will also negatively impact vendor scores, which can ultimately lead to a loss of a customer. Here at Old Dominion, through the strategic use of technology and operational execution, we've been able to consistently meet required delivery appointments and help our customers to achieve high and higher vendor scores.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the e-commerce component here that Ed just mentioned. Lisa, let me ask you here. I mean, certainly, e-commerce is not going away. Everybody wants to have their product and they want it now, this on-demand economy. Your thoughts on that, and how does that impact all the things we're talking about here?
No, there's no doubt about it. E-commerce took a really big leap during the pandemic for, obvious reasons. Everyone wanted something delivered to their house. And it's not on as large a trajectory in terms of growth, but it absolutely is going to continue because we have become, focused on the convenience. It's true for B2B as well. Smaller shipments more frequently to closer to the location, at the home for e-commerce or, like the use point in terms of B2B is critical because we have been living in a just-in-time society, and with all the shortages we've been experiencing, we're, typically speaking, things are running behind, extended lead times, and so we really need rapid, reliable deliveries. And on-time delivery is the key metric that every client uses to measure their performance. And of course, quality has to be assumed. Unfortunately, I think we're going to go beyond just on time and full type deliveries, though. We're going to have to stand out from the crowd coming up.
In which ways? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, on time and full is I've been working with several clients. Like one recently, we went from 40%, we brought it to back into the 90s, which was critical for them to be able to continue to grow their business. But given the turbulent conditions that I'm seeing, customers are going to need more in terms of a extra value added service from each point in the end-to-end supply chain, including on the carrier front. As we discussed earlier today, the carrier is the face to the customer. So how do we provide even more benefit to our customers? I don't think anyone has all of the answers yet, but we're going to have to be in front of changing customer conditions and continuing to evolve our ability to serve in new ways and provide new visibility and, of course, reliability. Like basically what I'm saying is reliability alone is not gonna cut it in the next couple of years.
It's not going to cut it. And Ed, I know you've been very passionate about this when it comes to relationships between the shipper and the carrier. So what does a stronger partnership between those two accomplish? And, how should they be working as we move forward here?
Jonathan, we still believe that our industry is a industry that's driven by strong relationships, and ultimately when the relationship between carrier and shipper, carrier and customer is solid, great things will happen. A strong partnership ultimately is going to lead to reduced costs for both shipper and the carrier, and there's several ways that to accomplish that. And one of the best methods to accomplish this is for both parties to agree that the relationship between the two is strategic rather than transactional. It takes the form of conducting business reviews, setting goals, expectations, clarifying KPIs and metrics, and nurturing relationships through scheduled quarterly meetings, including interaction with the executive level at both companies. Just a few of the critical steps that are needed towards forging and keeping a long-term partnership between carrier and shipper. The big thing is the carrier is simply an extension of the customer's business, and that's the bottom line. And a lot of companies fail to recognize that fact, that customers see their product being delivered. They don't necessarily see the carrier, and it's important to have that face of the customer be solid and friendly, on nice equipment and on time and intact. Otherwise, it leaves a bad taste in the customer's mouth, and ultimately could result in the loss of a customer, which is a huge cost. So that's the big thing that I hope we accomplish here.
But I imagine, Ed, it's also got to be difficult for you to convince customers of all these things you just outlined.
It is very much so. We actually developed a value calculator that allows the customer to plug in all the metrics associated with the movement of freight, including the price. They can include fines, late shipments, lost opportunity from a sales standpoint, and actually calculate what the actual cost of moving a shipment is, aside from price. And unfortunately, there are a lot of customers out there that price is the key determinant in their decision-making process. More and more transportation budgets are having visibility to fines. In the past, it was simply a function of sales, and sales was the only group that had visibility to the fine structures. But things are changing, and which is good for us because it allows us to share what the actual total cost is.
And Lisa, this was something you talked about earlier. I mean, have you sensed that priorities are changing from these companies, that they maybe aren't so focused on price? I think it's hard for a lot of people to actually believe that, considering the economic times that we're in.
Right. I think, I think they're always going to be focused on cost, but I think that more and more people are looking at the total cost in their end-to-end supply chain, and that includes things like reshoring, because they're realizing that they need to service their customers, but they also are looking at cost because if you think about it, they have to figure out if it makes sense to be in the business they're in, and if they can continue to raise prices to their customers or not. So I think it's one of many pieces of the puzzle, but I think that they're definitely looking more at their they're getting smarter in terms of the total cost idea, but it's still like a daily conversation to make sure that that everyone understands.
Constant assurances. So, I mean, Ed, I kind of wanted to ask you, what do you guys do to try to build those relationships and try to drive home this point that, listen, it's not just about the cost.
Yeah, it's relatively easy to do if we've been able to gain entry into an account, because we can show them mathematically how our price, even though it may be a few percentage points higher, ultimately provides the lowest cost to them. And we've been pretty successful at doing that. Our market share has grown to a little over 12%, and over the years, our revenue growth, I think, is a good indicator of the fact that people are willing to pay for value, and that we're getting the value proposition message out to the customers, both current and potential customers.
So what do you think that these relationships should look like going forward between the shippers and the carriers? What does the future look like in this realm?
One of the big mistakes that a lot of carriers make is they come in and tell the customer about all the service options they have, instead of asking the customer, what are your pain points? What are your challenges? How can we best meet your challenges? And again, not every carrier is a solution for every single shipper, but it's just about communication, which is essentially the key to everything. It's good communication.
Lisa, what do you say to that?
That I think that you need to continue to not just talk about the total cost, but how it benefits them. You always want to put it in the customer's best interest. And
But you're giving the impression that's a tough sale.
yeah, it is a tough sale. I mean, that's the thing, is you have to it's a lot harder work. That's the problem, is a lot of times folks, that's why do we reshore all sorts of products that we shouldn't have reshored? Well, it's because it was an easy sale, because they said, oh, labor cost is less, so just go do it, without looking at, will you have quality product? Will it be reliable? How much extra cost is added in because of inventory? To your point, how much extra cost is added in for, fees and other things? So, that's the constant struggle. The bottom line is everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, there's a potential recession. I need to save money. And they start thinking that way. So you have to start from that and show them how it's, they're going to end up in worse shape.
Very good point. Lisa, as we wrap up here, I want to ask you about a quote from a recent release that you published here. So this is the quote. Pencils and erasers, Excel spreadsheets, and gut instincts no longer work. Manufacturing today is complex. Customers are sophisticated. Their needs and wants change depending on the end user. It is up to manufacturers to anticipate change, plan for it, and be able to change at a moment's notice. So I want you to talk more about that, and how can logistics partners help manage all of these complexities?
Well, you're absolutely right. Uh, I think that logistics partners they need to be a part of the conversation first and work in a collaborative manner with shippers, so that they can. I mean, I think that no one party, no one person is going to have all of the answers, but we're going to have to be utilizing, there's many technological advancements. There's the use of data. So we can, be looking across, maybe multiple sites, or multiple customers even, or, in terms of from the carrier standpoint, and be thinking about, like, what ideas can we present where we can come up with some kind of a savings for the shippers, and or some kind of a service improvement or reliability improvement. There's many different options and ways to innovate. To some degree, it's just getting multiple people together to brainstorm and think about them, test some scenarios, and put some solutions in place. But basically, I think that the key there is going to be collaborating, looking at technology, and really honing in on what's important to the end customer, and how can we figure out what they will need next, so that we can be ahead of the game, and how do we make sure that we build resiliency into our supply chain, so that with changing conditions, which is going to be the norm for years to come, I believe. So with changing conditions, we can not only respond quickly, but respond without adding substantial cost. So we need to be responsive with changing visibility so that we can see what is happening and where our product is in every piece along the chain. So we're going to have to be responsive, but we're going beyond responsive to be more predictive in our way that we're working together.
Without question, changing conditions are definitely the norm. These are times of change. Ed and Lisa, thank you both so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. You've given us a lot to think about around creating resilience in your logistics operations, including calculating your total cost of transportation and strengthening the relationship, important, between the shipper and carrier. That is certainly something that is critical when managing cost, ensuring business growth, and logistics success. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our full Cargo Shorts podcast series. Visit the resources section of the Old Dominion Freight Line website at odfl.com, where you can find additional information and materials on this topic. Thanks for listening.